Ezra Levant here. I'm at Rebel News World headquarters in Toronto. Short hours ago, about 1 hour ago, Justin Trudeau announced the invocation of the Emergencies Act. It is the successor legislation to the War Measures Act that his own father deployed against Canada in the October crisis in 1970. Back then, there was an actual terrorist group, a Quebec separatist terrorist group called the FLQ, that was murdering people, kidnapping people, bombing mailboxes. So Pierre Trudeau brought in the War Measures Act in Quebec on a temporary basis. But Pierre Trudeau took advantage of that civil liberties crisis, arresting hundreds of political opponents, not terrorists, political opponents. The RCMP took advantage of that crisis and engaged in shocking crimes under the cover of that crisis. It's famously documented how, in addition to arresting Trudeau's political enemies, they would burn the barns belonging to Trudeau's opponents, like just committed arson. Here we are 52 years later, and Justin Trudeau has learned all the worst lessons from his own father. Justin Trudeau has used the pretext of the trucker rebellion, which has got to be the most peaceful mass movement, certainly in Canadian history, and probably in a few other places too. 100,000 people collectively across the country. 2 weeks of protest, not a single violent act. And yet Trudeau repeatedly today said they are not a peaceful protest. Do we have any of those clips today? If we do, I wouldn't mind throwing to a clip of Trudeau blatantly lying in his press conference today, saying that they were dangerous. I'm not sure if he actually had the chutzpah to use the word violent, but he repeatedly said it is not a peaceful protest. Do we have those clips? All right, let's get some audio, and here he is saying that.
Enduring illegal obstruction of their neighborhoods, occupying streets, harassing people, breaking the law. This is not a peaceful protest. Here in our capital city, families and small businesses have been enduring illegal obstruction of their neighborhoods, occupying streets, harassing people, breaking the law. This is not a peaceful protest.
All right. I concede that there was some horn honking. That was dealt with by a court order asking the truckers not to use their air horns in the city, a court order that has been complied with. The bridge between Windsor and Detroit was blocked for several days, and it was cleared peacefully by regular cops. It was completely peaceful. Trudeau saying that someone might have harassed someone on the street does not mean the protest of 100,000 people in using civil disobedience at worst is a violent insurrection. In my monologue on my show tonight, which is at 8 p.m., you can see that on Rebel News Plus, I read the 4 definitions of a national security threat in the CSIS Act, which is the definition used in the Emergencies Act. The 4 definitions that invoke the Emergencies Act are such a high threshold. Literally, it has to be the threat of a violent revolution or the threat of serious foreign espionage. That's the kind of language on the definitions of a threat to Canada contemplated in the Emergencies Act. And all Trudeau mustered was someone was harassed on the street. Maybe and maybe not. Frankly, I don't believe a word he says. I mean, he calls everyone Nazis, and we know that's not true. But even if what he said there is true, it does not rise to the level of a national emergency. There is no need to suspend civil liberties and bring in the Emergencies Act when regular police can do the job. In fact, many provincial premiers, when consulted by Trudeau told him that, from Quebec to Alberta to Saskatchewan. They said, we don't need the Emergencies Act. They can handle it on their own. That buffoon Doug Ford did, but there's no answering for him. The reason for the Emergencies Act was not because there is a violent revolution in Canada. The reason for the Emergencies Act was that Trudeau was using the trucker rebellion as a pretext to go after his political enemies in a way never contemplated before in a free society. Here, I want to play for you, and in telling fashion, Trudeau himself didn't get into it. He left it to Chrystia Freeland, who bizarrely is, if you go to the World Economic Forum's website, this never ceases to amaze me. She is the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. She's the Finance Minister of Canada. And she also serves, can you go to WE Forum and just search Chrystia Freeland WE Forum? She's got a page on the world. Yeah, there it is there. The World Economic Forum. Chrystia Freeland. She is on the board of governors of the World Economic Forum, while she's the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister of Canada. Just incredible. This is the Klaus Schwab people. This is the you'll own nothing and you'll be happy people. Listen to what Chrystia Freeland, who for 25 years has worked for George Soros, including as his biographer. Listen to what she said today. The real changes, the real purpose and force of the Emergencies Act had nothing to do with the Ambassador Bridge, which was cleared. Has nothing to do with Ottawa, which has a court order stopping the honking. It was about getting into the bank accounts of Trudeau's political opponents, terrifying them, seizing funds, and deeming them to be domestic terrorists. Take a look at this.
As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order. In doing so, they will be protected against civil liability for actions taken in good faith. Federal government institutions will have a new broad authority to share relevant information with banks and other financial service providers to ensure that we can all work together to put a stop to the funding of these illegal blockades. This is about following the money. This is about stopping the financing of these illegal blockades. We are today serving notice. If your truck is being used in these illegal blockades, your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. Send your semi-trailers home. The Canadian economy needs them to be doing legitimate work, not to be illegally making us all poorer.
There's another clip there. I wouldn't mind if you could tee it up, where she talks about using counterterrorism laws to go after crowdfunding. But you heard the staggering thing she said there. Banks can now seize or freeze your money without a court order, and you can't sue them. Did you hear that? They're indemnified against civil liability. So your bank, cancel culture, deplatforming. This is the Chinese social credit system. Canadian banks can now seize your money without a court order, and you have no recompense. You cannot sue them. This is what they do in places like Venezuela. This is what they did in Russia to Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the wealthiest man in Russia 20 years ago. I don't know if you know the story of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the wealthiest man in Russia, who made the mistake of funding democracy groups. Well, Putin didn't like that very much. They boarded his private jet in Siberia and nationalized all his assets and threw him in prison. That's what Putin did to the richest man in the country. Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland of the World Economic Forum just said that they will do that to you. Do we have the comment about crowdfunding? If we find it, that's great. She specifically mentioned crowdfunding. Now, I'm familiar with crowdfunding. It's how we raise most of our money here at Rebel News. The crowdfunding for the truckers was obviously for the convoy, for food and for gas and for lawyers and things like that. Trudeau and Freeland and the crooked Justice Minister Liberties, and I call him crooked because he was brought in after Jody Wilson-Raybould, who was too ethical a Justice Minister for Trudeau. He weighed in the press conference too. Just a total, if you know the phrase, the power to tax is the power to destroy. But what about the power to seize? If you could seize your opponent's bank account based on a rumor, without any due process, without a hearing, without a court procedure, you can destroy any opponent. You can just do it. That's what Vladimir Putin did to Mikhail Khodorkovsky. And that's what Freeland, Liberties, and Trudeau are now going to do to any Canadian. And they won't stop there. Did you hear what she said about seizing trucks, seizing corporate accounts, revoking insurance? You know, I haven't practiced law in 20 years. I used to be a lawyer. I didn't do a lot of lawyering. But I know enough. And when a murderer is convicted and sentenced, you can send a murderer to jail for a long time. You can actually get some sort of a financial penalty off him, but typically that's not a large thing in crimes. But you can't, under Canadian law, take away a man's ability to earn a living. That's just not a thing. We don't say to murderers, we're taking away your insurance on your truck. We're taking away your corporate bank account. That penalty is not contemplated even for murderers. It takes someone who truly hates a working class man to say, if you have a peaceful expression of protest, we are not only going to seize, we are not only going to violate your rights, we're going to de-insure you, and we're going to take your property so you can't earn a living. You know, I listened to the press conference by Trudeau, and then I listened to the statements, and then I listened to the press conference, and I listened to the questions by the media party. And what was so incredible to me was that not a single journalist asked a question about civil liberties. In fact, the most aggressive questions to Trudeau and company were why they weren't being harsher on the truckers in Ottawa. The journalists hate those truckers because they've been an inconvenience for them personally, and they've been outraged that the city has not cracked down in a harder manner. It was a disgrace to listen to the journalists not ask about civil liberties and rather to demand that Trudeau go harder. I see that Rosemary Barton, the government journalist at the CBC state broadcaster, is tweeting that there is no violation of civil liberties here. At least in 1970, when Trudeau Sr. destroyed civil liberties under the War Measures Act, journalists were shocked. I mean, you know that question, how far will you go? And Trudeau said, just watch me. Do we have that old-timey clip? It's a very famous clip. We'll play it if we got it. But at least back then, people were shocked. with what Trudeau did. The journalists were shocked that a free country would suspend civil liberties. But alas, today's journalists are not that independent. Pierre Trudeau would never have dreamed of putting all journalists on his payroll. Justin Trudeau did it, and the journalists didn't mind. Here, take a look at Trudeau saying it.
To me, is choices. And my choice is to live in a society that is free and democratic, which means that you don't have people with guns running around in it.
All right, then
And one of the things I have to give up for that choice is the fact that people like you may be kidnapped.
Sure.
Sir, if you had to right now...
But this isn't my choice, obviously. You know, I think it's more important to get rid of those who are committing violence against the total society and those who are trying to run the government through a parallel power by establishing their authority by kidnapping and blackmail. And I think it's our duty as a government to protect government officials and important people in our society against being used as tools in this blackmail. Now, you don't agree to this, but I'm sure that, once again, with hindsight, you would have probably found it preferable if Mr. Cross and Mr. Laporte had been protected from kidnapping, which they weren't, because the steps we're taking now weren't taken. But even with your hindsight, I don't see how you can deny that.
No, I still go back to the choice that you have to make in the kind of society that you live in.
There's a lot of bleeding hearts around who just don't like to see people with helmets and guns. All I can say is go on and bleed, but it's more important to keep law and order in this society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks of a social
At any
family.
cost? At any cost? How far would you go with that? How far would you extend that?
Well, just watch me.
At reducing civil liberties?
Like I say, after that, Trudeau used the War Measures Act to arrest hundreds of nonviolent political opponents in Quebec, and the RCMP committed arson against Trudeau's opponents. And that was when there was actual terrorism in the streets of Quebec. Not a single person who has watched the Truckers' Rebellion could say that it is an insurrection. All we see are mums and dads and kids and Canadian flags and people of all backgrounds, and it's a festival feeling. To call that an insurrection or a revolution is to lie. I don't think that Pierre Trudeau would have invoked the War Measures Act because some truckers were honking. I think that this shows the great failure of Canadian checks and balances. I think it also shows that Trudeau refuses ever to blink or to apologize or to compromise. Trudeau inflamed things from the very beginning, denouncing these truckers and their supporters as racist, sexist, implied that they were Nazis. In the election last fall, he said the same thing, and he said that we should not tolerate those people. He has the strictest anti-unvaccinated rules in the free world, barring anyone who's unvaccinated from flying on a plane or taking a train, even in the second largest country in the world. He deliberately polarizes and demonizes because that's how politics has always worked for him. But when these truckers turned out to be a mass movement, almost like a peaceful general strike, rather than some fringe with unacceptable opinions, as he said before, he had painted himself into a corner by demonizing them. And so today he threw more kerosene on the fire. Now he's equating them with terrorists. And he's equating anyone who donated to them as terrorists. I'm worried about what this will do for political opposition in Canada. I wonder how seriously people will take it. On the one hand, we've been under a state of emergency, really, for 2 years. We've accepted so many atrocious things in the name of a permanent emergency, we were told it would be 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of those 2 weeks. I say again that this is the greatest infringement of civil liberties in our history. Not only saying where you can go, but who you can gather with, even in the privacy of your own home. Churches shut down. In Alberta, there is a pastor in solitary confinement in prison right now because of some health law that he allegedly broke a year ago. He's in solitary confinement today. Arthur Pavlovsky is his name. And the police have been weaponized to fulfill these bizarre and absurd and ever-changing and obscure and unscientific health orders, something that police were never contemplated to. Never before did police go out and deal with health orders. My point is, though, after 2 years of being told everything's an emergency and everything's a crisis and our civil liberties have to be infringed again and again, I don't know the impact of Trudeau's emergency. Will people say, yeah, throw that emergency on the pile of the other emergencies that have previously been declared? I don't know if its impact will be dulled by the fact that we've been told so many times that we're in an emergency. I think people will be shocked to be called a terrorist by their own prime minister, and that's really what they suggested. Do we have any clip of them using the word terrorist or anything in terms of money laundering? Do you have a clip? We'll throw that clip at you when we get it. That's the thing. I mean, there was all sorts of threats and huffing and puffing over the last 2 weeks, and it didn't seem to stop the truckers. On my show tonight, I talked to Joel Pollack, and I said, what can be done? And Joel said, look, in a country as big and diverse as Canada, some people will comply, but you can't govern Canada as a police state. I think Joel's probably right, but if you've got this kind of power to seize bank accounts and to spy on people that the government has announced today, maybe you can rule a country as big and mighty as Canada as an authoritarian regime. Here's a clip of Chrystia Freeland implying that if you donated $20 to help the truckers, you're now a terrorist financier.
First, we are broadening the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. These changes cover all forms of transactions, including digital assets, such as cryptocurrencies. The illegal blockades have highlighted the fact that crowdfunding platforms and some of the payment service providers they use are not fully captured under the Proceeds of Crime and Terrorist Financing Act.
Well, there you have it. They're effectively saying that the truckers are terrorists, and if you chipped in 10 or 20 or $100 for their convoy, you're a terrorist financier. And I'm just chuckling thinking about the fact that when it comes to actual terrorists like Omar Khadr, Justin Trudeau will not seize his bank account. In fact, Justin Trudeau will fill up his bank account. As you recall, Omar Khadr, the convicted, confessed al-Qaeda murderer and war criminal, was given a public apology from Justin Trudeau and $10.5 million. This abusiveness towards peaceful democratic protest is in contrast to how Trudeau deals with real enemies to Canada. Trudeau is obsequious to terrorists like Omar Khadr. Trudeau bends the knee to communist China even when they kidnap 2 Canadians for 1,000 days. He reserves his rage for Canadian citizens who happen to peacefully and joyfully disagree with him. To say that horn honking is a reason to bring in a national version of the War Measures Act is obviously a lie. But as I think I've proven to you, it's not actually about law and order on the streets. It's about getting the identity of everyone in the country who dares to electronically chip in $10 or whatever to Trudeau's political opponents. Look at the screen right now of those flag-waving happy Canadians. Trudeau is saying that they are tantamount to terrorists. And you saw what the Ottawa police tweeted about a week ago, that they are seizing, without warrant, all the digital ID of anyone who was there. So the police would have gone in and scanned every cell phone there and found the identity of everyone there. And I bet they're being put in a terrorist database. The irony is that Trudeau is opposed to those sorts of terrorist databases. He thinks the no-fly rule is a form of racial discrimination. He couldn't be softer on actual terrorism, but he is building a database of enemies. And you heard him. In fact, do we have the David Lametti quote? Where Lametti says that banks will be invited to or ordered to seize the bank accounts of Trudeau's enemies. Now, they don't use the phrase Trudeau's enemies, but that's who's being targeted here. They're not talking about environmental extremists who have poured in money into Canadian eco groups for years. Let me know when you have the Lametti clip. I don't know if we have it, but thank you. All right, let me see if I can get some questions or comments here. You know what? They're just whipping by so fast. I can't even read them. They're going by so fast. I'm going to give up. I just can't. My eyes can't read that fast. Looks like we got the Lametti clip ready to go. Let's take a look.
Reasonable
In closing,
and appropriate.
I want to emphasize one point clearly. These measures are temporary.
I don't
We
believe that.
intend to impose them
I don't
for
believe that.
only as long as needed to restore order.
No.
across the
What are they going to do with the data
Thank
they
you.
seize?
Yes.
Will that be destroyed? They're building a database of enemies. That's not a bad clip, but can we get the one where he says, for example, tow truck companies will be commandeered. If they refuse to let their tow trucks be rented by the government will literally commandeer the tow trucks to tow these truckers. That's what Lametti said. And there was another part where he said the banks will be invited to or forced to close bank accounts of Trudeau's enemies. Anyhow, we'll see if we can find that. I see a comment that says time for West separation. You know, that's what Joel Pollack said to me on my show tonight that airs at 8, is that this will exacerbate a lot of things in the Canadian democracy. A lot of people thought that Canadian democracy was not working well even before this. And I think that'll be especially true in Alberta, which has already been abused in a number of ways by Trudeau. Albertans like their civil rights more than most. They're just the freest province in Canada. It's just a fact. I think that if Trudeau and the entire Laurentian elite, the entire establishment allows, and do you really think this won't be extended? Like, really? Oh, just 2 weeks, just a promise. Okay, just another 2 weeks, a promise. Just a couple more weeks. You really think the state of emergency will be ended? Just like this income tax will be ended as soon as we beat the Kaiser in the Great War. Looks like we got the Lametti clip. Go ahead.
What we are seeing in Ottawa and what we are seeing at the Ambassador Bridge are not lawful protests. Second, designating and securing places where blockades are to be prohibited. This could include borders, approaches to borders, and other critical infrastructures, or Ottawa. Directing persons to render essential services to relieve impacts of blockades on Canada's economy. And this could include tow trucks and their drivers, for compensation, of course. Authorizing or directing financial institutions to render essential services to relieve the impact of blockades, including, as we have heard from the Deputy Prime Minister, regulating and prohibiting the use of property to fund or support the blockades.
Thanks.
Measures.
So I missed that the first time I heard that. Liberties will not just commandeer the trucks. He'll commandeer the truck drivers too. He will literally force, at gunpoint, I presume. How else do you force someone to drive a tow truck to tow the truckers away? You heard him. He didn't just said tow truck. I heard he said and drivers. How do you? I know how you commandeer a piece of equipment. You say, "Give me your car," but you commandeer a driver? That's shocking. And you heard him there, authorizing and directing banks to seize the money of Trudeau's opponents. Do you have that screenshot I emailed to you, Andrew? Yeah. Rosemary Barton has blocked me, so I had to take a screenshot of it. Pump it up as big as you can. It's quite something. She says, it's in reference to the New York Times. The New York Times deleted their tweet. Isn't that funny? The New York Times said there was a restriction of civil liberties, and Rosemary Barton said, "Can you pump that up a little bit? I can't quite see that." This is completely false. In no way does this suspend civil liberties. Good grief. Unbelievably, the New York Times appears to have deleted their tweet. Now, I showed you a few clips straight from the horse's mouth. Seizing bank accounts with no court order. Banning you from suing banks for seizing your bank accounts. Commandeering property, tow trucks, and people, drivers. And the government journalist at Trudeau CBC state broadcaster says this in no way infringes civil liberties. They really are a state broadcaster, aren't they? Now, Andrew, what time do you got to get out of here? Okay. I don't want to, if Efron can take over from you, you know, it's Valentine's Eve, and our control room boss has a date for which he can't be late. And we just sort of pressed him into service, much like David Liberties would press a tow truck driver into service. We pressed Andrew into service with this live stream, but it looks like Efron can spot him off. I'm going to try and take some messages. They're whipping by so fast here. Trudeau will do, you know, these are going by, are these going by as fast for you as they are for me? I can't even keep up with them. How do I slow those down? Trudeau is instigating a bigger problem. These freedom convoys were peaceful. I understand in Ottawa the city was working with the truckers so residents were not impacted as much. That's exactly right. The mayor of Ottawa, whatever else you have to say about him, he had a back channel to the convoy, and he was working to move the trucks from certain neighborhoods to other neighborhoods. Isn't that, you know, sort of a solution-oriented approach as opposed to, I can understand why Trudeau doesn't want a solution-oriented approach. He wants the crisis as a pretext to seize his opponent's bank accounts. Pretty sure I'm branded a terrorist already for supporting Rebel News. Well, you know, it is terrifying. You know, we of course have not given money to the truckers. We've raised money for lawyers for the truckers. And I would just hope that raising money for lawyers, and everyone deserves a lawyer, and that's what I've always said. If Omar Khadr himself deserved a lawyer, surely these truckers deserve a lawyer. I would have to think that that's just a bridge too far. Paul Otto Newman, I think it may be time for Rebel News to move headquarters to the free state like Florida. You will not remain free to operate in Trudeau's Canada. Well, God forbid. I mean, I remember Dave Rubin, the great YouTuber, said, Ezra, why don't you come on down to Florida? I mean, for example, Rumble, they were headquartered here in Toronto, and they just left. They went to Florida. And my answer to Dave was, because our job is to fight for freedom. I mean, I'm not a journalist just for the sake of the craft. I'm a journalist because I believe we have a freedom mission. Our motto is telling the other side of the story, but it's more than that. It's about fighting for freedom. That's how I sign off my show every day. Keep fighting for freedom. And I do not think that I think I have to, I'm not using the phrase go down with the ship, but I think I've got to be the last to leave. That's just, maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I think. Let me read some more of these. North Korea or Canada. Seriously, I wonder what Canada's friends around the world will say. Joe Biden is probably fine with this. He wants the same sort of social credit system. I'm worried that we don't have checks and balances within our own country. I'm going to check right now. There's something in Canada called the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. It's the Canadian version of the ACLU, and I'm on their Twitter page right now. Their Twitter page, who's there? Is Andrew? Are you still there? Is there Efra on there? If you go to Twitter and then Can Civ Lib, yeah. So you see there, they have a pinned tweet from November, which is fine, and then scroll down. Their last tweet was 5 days ago, and it was about a new executive director. They haven't had anything to say in 5 days. Before that, they just, like you're scrolling back weeks here. They're talking about the CRTC or whatever. So Canada's thanks very much. So Canada's version of the ACLU has not had a word to say about this, not one word. Shocking but not surprising. Time to turn up the heat, people. Well, what does that mean? And to what end? I haven't seen Pierre Poilievre, the heir apparent to the Conservative Party. Can you go to Pierre's Twitter feed? I wonder if he said anything. And going to Twitter is not necessarily the only place he would express something, but it is where a lot of journalists say something. Looks like he hasn't had anything to say. Trudeau has created a political emergency. He can end it by reversing his mandates and restrictions. All right, so that was posted before Trudeau had his announcement, and that's a good message. I wonder what Pierre has to say about the emergency itself. Sheila Gunn-Reid just sent me a message saying that what Trudeau did to Canadians is what the Biden administration tried to do to parents who go to those PTA meetings who are upset about what their kids are being taught, that they were being called domestic terrorists and all that, and the FBI and the Justice Department were trying to criminalize their peaceful dissent. That's exactly the template that Trudeau is using for the 100,000 peaceful truckers who protested. Bob says re-education camps next, otherwise known as universities, I suppose. Trucker strike. Well, who knows if that would be caught by I haven't seen the actual text of the emergency declaration. We've just had a press conference. I don't know if we've actually seen the actual text of it, because who decides what is an illegal act or not? What are the specifics? What are the specs, the specifications for what is seized and what isn't? For example, Rebel News crowd funds, that's where we get our salaries from, so we pay our payroll. Would that be seized? And remember, banks don't need a court order, and you can't sue the bank in civil court, even if they're wrong. Scott Eskew, the triumph of evil happens when good men and women do nothing. Thank you, Canadian truckers. Well, there you have it. The truckers have done more for freedom in the last 2 years than any other institution in the country, which is why they're despised by the establishment. Information warfare, hold the line. Well, exactly, and that's one of the roles I think Rebel News has played so well over the last 2 weeks is we've told the other side of the story. So the bizarre liars at the CBC, like Rosemary Barton, who said, this is outrageous, there has not been a single violation of civil liberties. That's not the only point of view that's out there. Everyone who looks after their family is a terrorist. Yeah, well, they're using that word terrorist against their domestic political opponents. I saw a poll that put Trudeau at 16% approval. That implies 84% of Canadians are terrorists. Lucy Sky, the sadness in your voice is the sadness in my heart today, Ezra. You know, I got a bit of a sore throat, but I am sad, but I'm just a little under the weather. Someone here just said Pierre has a short YouTube. Okay, I didn't know that. You want to try going to Pierre's YouTube and seeing if that is? Pardon me? Thank you. So, again, I'm not looking for his general comments on the lockdowns. Does he have something to say in particular about the Emergencies Act? We know that a number of Canadian provinces have said we don't need this act, and it makes sense. The Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor was cleared by regular cops, and it was cleared really without incident. So is that his quick... Okay, let's take a look at what Pierre had to say, apparently.
Has caused a political emergency. While the rest of the world and provinces across Canada are beginning to remove restrictions and mandates, Justin Trudeau decided to pile new ones on, targeting truckers' livelihoods. And now he's got protests right around the country. And now he's dropping in the polls, desperately trying to save his political career and save face for himself. The solution is staring him in the face. All he has to do is listen to the experts, do what other countries are doing, and that is to eliminate these mandates and restrictions to let the protesters, including the truckers, go back to their jobs and their lives. Now, and speaking about the protests, I'll repeat to you what I told the very first time the media asked me about them. I stand with those peaceful and law-abiding protesters, including truckers, who are championing their freedoms and their jobs, while holding personally accountable any individuals who behave badly, break laws, or participate in blockades of critical economic infrastructure. I've always been against blockades, and I still am now, because I don't believe you can gain your freedom by blocking someone else's. So yes to peaceful protests, no to blockades. And you know how we can put an end to both of them, though? It's real simple. Listen to the science. Do what the other provinces and the other countries are doing. That is to end the mandates and the restrictions so the protesters can get back to their lives and their jobs.
Pierre Poilievre coming out against the Emergencies Act, pointing out, as I did a moment ago, that this targets the livelihoods of truckers, are very punitive. And I don't think that will hold up under the Charter of Rights for cruel and unusual treatment. It's a bizarre punishment designed to be cruel, and it is unusual. The thing is, there is no pandemic loophole in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. There's no political loophole in our Constitution that a politician can push the button and be exempt. I just got an email from a thoughtful person who says, Ezra, can this be challenged in court in some way? Can this be reviewed, subject to judicial review? Can the terms of it be limited? I don't have an answer for that off the top of my head. Earlier today, I watched a short speech by, I think it was Perrin Beatty, the Conservative cabinet minister who introduced the Emergencies Act to Parliament some 35 years ago. and it was very clear that the purpose of it was in extreme crises, like a revolution, like a genuine armed insurrection, not a bunch of honking cars. And of course, the whole thing is a Trojan horse. Yeah, so these are the four, I mentioned this earlier, these are the four categories of crisis that are necessary to invoke the Emergencies Act. Like, they have to be actual violent revolution. I don't know if you can see those on the screen. We're nowhere near there. We're nowhere near there. All right, let's go back to some of the comments here. If you want to put on the board any Rumble super chats or something, make it big so my old eyes can take a look. See, I don't know how to log into those on my laptop. You'll have to show me later. Mr. Diamond, New World Order. Well, you're exactly right. Christopher Freeland literally is on the Board of Governors of the World Economic Forum. $10 super chat. Thank you. That's a Rumble. What is next? Parliament needs to approve this, right? I don't have the Emergencies Act in front of me. I think it does need to be approved by Parliament. And I think it's subject to review in 30 days or something. So it has to be renewed, I think, after 30 days. I do not believe that these powers are temporary. If the Liberals use this to hoover up all the data on their enemies, they're not going to delete that data in 30 days. I really think that a lot of this reduction in our civil liberties will be irrevocable. I like what Pierre Poilievre said, but I don't think it was strong enough, or at least he didn't get to the area of basically seizing private bank accounts. I think that truly is Venezuela-style stuff. Here's one here from KB. If Trudeau tries to commandeer tow trucks, the owners should disable them. All right, well, you heard Lametti. He said that this gives the power to the state not just to commandeer trucks, but drivers too. Like, how do you do that? I mean, how do you commandeer a person? You heard him say that. He said, we played that clip. He says the power to commandeer trucks. All right, I know you steal someone's truck. That's easy enough to understand. But how do you commandeer a driver? Like, what even is that? And what do you do if he just won't drive? Do you throw him in jail, or do you just shoot him? I don't know. Like, how do you commandeer a human being? I don't know. That's just crazy stuff. That's crazy stuff. Loophole says totalitarianism. Adam Wiggins, nobody did anything to help Venezuela. Deanna Giesick, enemies list, outrageous. Lord Samuel says, Ezra, the Bloc just responded to the Emergencies Act. All right, well, what do they say? I don't know if we can call up. Maybe the Bloc Québécois has a tweet on that. Our Notre Chef, our leader, Blanchet, will comment tomorrow at 8 a.m. about the emergency announcement. All right, well, maybe, apparently they have said something earlier than that. Just looking at different comments here. Well, I don't have too much more to say right now. I want to see a few things. I want to see the details, like the actual words of the order. Because just what they say in little speeches at a press conference is not necessarily what the black and white words in the Emergencies Act orders are. So I want to see that. I want to see if the Conservative Party of Canada has the courage to be against it. I know there are some Conservatives in name only in the Conservative Party who will surely support this. I mean, there was this joke candidate, Tasha Karen, I used to know Tasha a bit 20 years ago, who was writing some really butch tweets about I would call in the Army and the CSIS Act and yada, yada. There are some Conservatives who really hate these truckers, I think, for reasons of snobbery and class, and also they want to fit in with the cool kids in Ottawa. It'll be interesting to me to see what the Conservative Party does in Ottawa. I know the media will absolutely try and hang around the neck of the Conservatives, the terrorism. Oh, we got the clip of Blanchet. Thanks. Go ahead, Efren.
Let's understand clearly that Quebec government, and us do not want this law to be implemented, on the territory of Quebec. It is not legitimate, and it is useless. So we don't want it, and we don't want the extent of the powers that the federal government could give itself to go as far as eventually using the army. Obviously not in Quebec, but I believe nowhere. But this is a decision which is, or a position which seems to be the decision of the government of Quebec as well as ours.
Just as a follow-up there, sir, what has been happening in Ottawa has spilled across the bridges into Gatineau, into Chelsea, into Masson-Angers. This whole region has been affected, and that includes parts that are in Quebec. Should there not be some action for the greater Ottawa-Gatineau area? Does that not apply?
There is no civil disorder in Quebec now which is not well contained by civil authorities and police.
You know, two interesting things there. First of all, the Bloc Québécois, the Separatist Party of Quebec, saying we don't want this, and neither does the government of Quebec. But you notice the question from the media party. You sure you don't want it? No, come on. You really do want it, right? Come on, you do, right? That's our media party. That's the disgrace of the day. I mean, Justin Trudeau being a petty authoritarian, that's not really news. He's always told us who he is. But the journalists falling over each other, oh, that's super gross. What else did you say we had on deck? Oh, the article? Okay, we don't need the article if we heard the guy. Now, the interim leader of the Conservative Party, Candace Bergen, did she say anything? Because I know that she has said some salutary things about the truckers, and a lot of Conservative MPs and senators were pro-trucker. What's interesting here is that this whole violence, domestic terrorism business is what happens when just calling someone racist, sexist, Nazi doesn't work anymore. And that clearly doesn't work anymore because that's what Gerald Butts told Justin Trudeau to say. Trudeau said it, and it backfired tremendously. So what do you do when you call someone racist, sexist, Nazi, whatever, and it doesn't work? Then you say, well, you're an insurrectionist. You are a terrorist. Well, that's terrifying because now you're being criminalized. If you're merely a racist, sexist, well, that doesn't criminalize you, does it? But a terrorist financier, you're giving aid and comfort to terrorists. Well, now all of a sudden, you might be thrown in prison. You might be put on a no-fly list yourself. And you can see that the media party is totally in league with Trudeau on this. I watched the whole press conference. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think I saw a single question on civil liberties. Did Candace Bergen say anything that you can see? No? Well, I'm going to chew this over some more. I wanted just to give a few thoughts. Efron, is there anything else you think I need to cover? I'm happy to read a few more rumbles. I'm not logged in, so I don't know how to see those. But if you want to put them up on the screen, I'll read them out. Can you pump that up a little bigger for my old eyes? I can't even see that. I'm not blind. It's so far away on the monitor there, and it's so little I can't read it. I'll read some more comments that I see whizzing by me. John's Guitar Barn, bought off media. That's exactly right. You can't put the media on a Trudeau stipend and expect them to bite the hand that feeds them. Hold the line, Canada. You've already won. They don't want you to know that. Hold the line. That's Jen Cray. There's a lot of truth there. The convoy, that's my speech I gave to the convoy. In Ottawa, I said, you've already won just by being here, by proving you're not alone, and by being a symbol for the rest of the country to rally around. Jacob Castro says, free Pastor Arthur Pawlowski. We're trying on that. Fred Waldron, don't let Justin Trudeau provoke violence. Government has a monopoly on violence. Well, isn't that the truth? And the people did not give Trudeau any violence as a pretext, so he just went ahead anyways. All right, I'm trying to use. Are you sending things to me by Slack? Is that what's going on now? And is that by direct message? Is that how you did that? Got it. So Keith Hooper says, where is he speaking from? I think it might have been from one of the parliamentary buildings. PH 1944 says, prior message should be invoked, not invoiced. What provinces supported the Emergency Act? Ontario did. To Doug Ford's eternal disgrace. I don't think Doug Ford has any shame. I don't think he can ever feel disgrace. He is a walking ball of disgrace. Harper will always... Okay, so these are from... okay. Anyways, I want to chew this over. Here's what I want to do. Number one, I want to see the written version of all this. Why? Because it's one thing to have a speech, and what we know from Trudeau and the Liberals is sometimes what they say is just for shock effect to scare people. I want to see the real nuts and bolts, the fine print. I absolutely believe they are going after crowdfunding, conservative fundraisers. They're trying to use anti-terrorism laws. I absolutely believe that. I just want to see how that's worded. You heard them. They're instructing, directing banks to seize accounts of political opponents without a court order. That's insane, even though Rosemary Barton says that's not a violation of civil liberties. So I want to see the text. I want to learn a little bit more about the law of emergency powers. I want to learn if it's possible for this to be challenged in court, to be limited, to be restricted. Oh, one more super chat here. Absolutely passionate says general strike or it's game over. It's an interesting comment because I feel like this trucker rebellion was a kind of general strike. I've used that word a lot. Sort of a wildcat general strike. It'll be interesting to see because, you know, there's a myth that these truckers were financed. Yes, GoFundMe raised $10 million, but then that was canceled. And then, yes, Give, Send, Go raised millions more. But that was frozen. Now, the funds themselves are in the U.S., but anyone subject to the Ontario court order cannot touch those funds. So close to $20 million was raised for the truckers, but none of it got to the truckers. I think about $1.5 million was transferred to the TD Bank, but that was seized by the TD Bank. So all this talk about money, no money actually made it to the truckers. And frankly, none was needed. Truckers paid for their own gas. They paid for their own meals. It was a very organic, grassroots thing. It was not a top-down exercise. So it had a general strike feeling. Everyone just sort of chipping in, doing their own thing, joining spontaneously. I wonder if there would be a general strike in response. I don't know. Some people will be scared by what they heard today. Some people will be enraged. Some people won't know what to think. Some people will actually believe the government journalists and say, oh no, this is very, very necessary. In fact, the government should have gone further. And no, don't worry. This doesn't violate any civil liberties. No siree. Some people will see this as a Venezuela-style, Cuba-style end to our status as a civil liberties democracy. I can't tell you what the Canadian Civil Liberties Association thinks because they're on vacation. I know what we're going to do here at Rebel News. We're going to keep telling the other side of the story. I think our chief role during the last phase has been just to document what's happened. And thank God we've had journalists in 8, 9, 10 cities because we have shown the true nature of the trucker rebellion. Peaceful, broad support, diverse Canadians, positive. If you relied on the liars of the state media, you would not know what was going on. I think the legal side of our operation will increase in urgency and size. Not just for the people that we've offered to crowdfund access to justice for, but who knows, maybe even will need help. Justin Trudeau despises Rebel News. He says so. He has said so on the floor of the House of Commons. Twice he has kept Rebel News out of the federal leaders' debates. Twice we've had to go to federal court to sue our way in. And when we did get in, our reporter Alexa Lavoie put a question to him, and so did Tamara Ugolini. And he just refused to answer. He said, I don't even regard you as journalists, even though short hours earlier, the federal court said, indeed we are. So Trudeau hates us deeply, and he happens to know that we live on crowdfunding. So it wouldn't surprise me if he makes a move against Rebel News. Very interesting days. Is there anything else you think I should mention, Efron? All right. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to wrap it up. It's a pleasure to do a little live stream again. I'm sorry I wasn't better connected to the Rumble rants and that kind of thing. It's been a little bit helter-skelter for me. But I'll keep you posted in the days ahead. On behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night. Keep fighting for freedom.
A bunk is quite small, right? Like there's one bed in there, so to sleep multiple kids, their wife, especially now that we're 2 weeks into this, is very challenging. So we're more than fortunate to have access to hotel rooms and local housing. So any families, they've been sleeping in the hotels and the housing just because it's available, and it's, like I said, very uncomfortable for the families to be sleeping in their trucks.
So here, Alexa, for Rebel News, I'm still in Ottawa reporting on what is going on. And today, I was interested to know about the safety of the children here. As you know, recently in the mainstream media, they were worried about the safety of the children here during the movement of the Freedom Convoy. So I've been on the ground, I've been asking questions to the parents. Let's check it out. Why it's important for you to bring your kids here at the Freedom Convoy?
I need them to see what standing up for your freedom and rights looks like. For them, they got to see the truckers go by. We're in from Pembroke, and that was really exciting. But I was here last week, and I saw how peaceful it is, how beautiful, like the smiles, how happy everyone is. And I thought they need to see this. They need to see what kind of history is being made here, and not just read about it later on in the future. They need to see what everyone's fighting for.
it's important for our family to stand for freedom together, I think, and they're going to be the next generation, you know. So that's what I would say. Do you want to add?
Well, and like there's, nothing for them to be afraid of here. Everybody's really friendly, completely safe, and it's good. Yeah, it's good for them to see Canadian patriotism and unity across every spectrum of Canadians. So,
to know their rights, everybody has the rights to choose, and everybody's got constitutional rights no matter what your age is. And for a protest, I don't think it's very protest-like. It's almost seeming like a very family-oriented thing. And everybody here is happy and learning that we all have rights.
It's for their future, that they have the freedom to be who they are meant to be and to use the gifts that God has given them. And this is very important. It's a time in history that this has a chance to give her freedom back. If this won't, I don't know what will.
I think it's important that they come and support this. Everyone's fighting for their freedom, their future. It's important for them to see what it's like.
Pourquoi pour vous c'est important d'emmener votre enfant ici au convoi?
Mais c'était pour pas mal visiter puis montrer aussi que c'est une bonne place pour les enfants.
Ouais. Et jusqu'à maintenant, comment s'est passée l'atmosphère avec les enfants?
C'est beaucoup familial. Plus que je pensais, on se fait donner plein de choses puis le monde sont beaucoup après les enfants. Comme c'est vraiment familial.
Mm-hmm. Ouais. Ça fait combien de temps que vous êtes ici?
Ben nous, on est arrivés ce matin puis c'est ça.
Et combien de temps vous pensez rester?
Juste la journée, on va revenir probablement en fin de semaine. Je voulais voir c'était comment. Puis je suis très heureux avec la petite. C'est parfait.
Can you describe the atmosphere for the children here on the ground?
Very, very happy. Everybody's willing to say hi and hug each other. There's a hockey game going on down the street full of kids, and everybody's just having a good time here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's happiness constantly. Like everybody's giving them hugs. They're handing out like granola bars and they make cards for truckers and other people. So they've constantly just seen how happy everyone, how peaceful, how loving it is. And for them to kind of finally see that environment, see that there's hugs, there's love, there's happiness instead of just a constant fear like the rest of the world is trying to impose on kids right now and everyone.
It's been absolutely beautiful. We've been here a few days and we keep coming back, and it's such a wonderful place to be. Everyone has the same goals in life. Everyone is happy to be together, united, and that we want freedom, and we need it for ourselves, we need it for our children, we need it for our grandmas and grandpas and our whole families. Everyone needs to be able to have that chance to just live life normally again.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's welcoming. Everyone loves it. They're thanking us for bringing the kids down, and we're thanking them for being here, supporting us, and we just love it.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel any danger for them?
No, not at all.
Oh, no. We're from a very small town. Actually, we're on a farm, and it's we're just the kids were going off on their kind of wandering away, and one of the truckers said it's a very safe place, and I said, I know. I feel like we're in a hometown fair. And it's beautiful.
Oh gosh, no. Not at all. I talked to my husband. Unfortunately, my husband couldn't come because he's working today. But he said it, and he's like, no, like I trust your judgment. And I said, I've already been there, and that's why I came here last week to see what it was like. And I'm like, there's nothing. There's nothing bad here. There's no reason to fear for them. Like there's play sets. There was bouncy castles this weekend. They're having so much fun. I have no fear for them being here.
And do you feel any danger for the children around here?
No. I mean, like, you know, sometimes you get weird people downtown, but I mean...
there's actually fewer strange people around now than there is usually, so yeah.
Absolutely not. Not during the day. I'm not quite sure how it is at nighttime. I know everybody's seen the videos, but during the day it's totally safe, but I can't comment on the nighttime.
Mm-hmm. And are you staying here, or are you just coming during the day?
Just came during the day, so we're only an hour and a half away, so it wasn't too bad of a drive, so... Yeah, it was worth the drive.
Yeah. And are you staying here, or you are a family that run a truck?
We're local. Yeah. So we live just outside of Ottawa and just coming down. It's their third time here over the last 2 weeks. So just like to see how things are going and keep encouraging the truckers that came here and are standing up for our freedom.
If you were a trucker, would you stay with your entire family in the truck?
Oh, that's a hard call to make. I think because we have such a young family, it would be very difficult to stick around with them for an extended period of time. At the same time, it would be hard to be, if I was traveling across the country, it would be hard to leave my family behind for that too. So all the truckers that are doing that, I just really appreciate that sacrifice that they're making.
If you were yourself a truck driver, would you live with your children inside of your truck?
For this instance, I would. Yes, absolutely. To prove a point that that in this fight for freedom, that people are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice.
I would feel safe too. What I've experienced, I haven't been here all the time, but I would say the people that are here, the people that are for freedom, the people that want their lives back, the people that see the lies that are happening and how our lives are controlled, they're for each other. Everyone is supported, everyone is helping each other, and I would feel safe in this environment.
And now you live all together in the hotel?
Actually, we don't. We've been coming and going. We're not that far away. We don't have a glamorous story on how we ended up here. We come during the day. We have a farm. We have to take care of our livestock. One of our sons brought in a tractor the other day, and we did bring it home. We needed it, but we're doing our part, and our kids too. They want freedom, and they're doing what they can. That they have the right to be able to do what God has in mind for them.
Yes, I would. We're fed up with this. We're farmers. We're tired of it. We can't get parts. We can't do anything. So the kids haven't been in sports because we refuse to get them vaccinated. We refuse to be vaccinated. So it'll be nice to get back to normal. I hope this does a difference.
What do you prefer here?
What do you like to do?
I like to play hockey. There's like hockey going down there, and see other kids and give them stuff. We're giving them out shirts and stuff and giving them to people.
As a truck driver, can you explain to me for the other trucker with their family, what is going on? Do you see a lot of families sleeping in their truck, or they sleep somewhere else?
Yeah, so there's lots of families around. We see kids all day long. Kids come and take pictures and hang out with us all day long. I rolled in from Saskatchewan, so there's lots of families that came in their trucks. But a bunk is quite small, right? Like there's one bed in there, so to sleep multiple kids, their wife, especially now that we're 2 weeks into this, is very challenging. So we're more than fortunate to have access to hotel rooms and local housing. So any families, they've been sleeping in the hotels and the housing just because it's available, and it's, like I said, very uncomfortable for the families to be sleeping in their trucks. So, yeah.
And can you describe the atmosphere for the children so far here?
Oh, the kids love it. Yeah, the kids they're over the moon. They're supporting us how they can. They're giving us lots of pictures they made. They had bouncy castles. There's nothing but positivity. Like the kids are our number one focus, so they've been treated fantastic. Yeah, they're more than welcome here.
And do you feel any danger for them?
Not at all. No, absolutely not. The kids are, you can tell just by everybody around. It's very safe for kids. I would never tell someone not to bring kids here. It's very beneficial to have your kids here and have them see what's going on.
So at Bell News, we want to support the truck driver, and we want to